Hello, welcome to Quest for Truth. Your hosts are Rob Skiba and Douglas Hamp. This is a new show that we're doing, and the idea is really to put the Bible on trial, so to speak. The idea is when you go to a Jewish house of study called a Beit Midrash, you don't go and find a bunch of people very quiet. You don't find them whispering, but you find actually a lot of noise. You find a lot of people dialoguing rather passionately about what's in front of them. They're talking about the Bible, or they may be talking about the Talmud, which we're not planning on doing necessarily. But the idea is that iron sharpens iron. As one iron sharpens iron, so the contents of one man sharpens another. And what Rob and I want to do is to sharpen each other. We agree on most things, but there's a few things we don't agree about. There's some things that we just don't see eye to eye on, and you know what? That's okay, because he's a great brother, and he's going to sharpen me, and hopefully I can sharpen him. And you know, the idea is that we will eventually come to the truth in the Word, of course. Our basis for this show is going to be the Word of God. It's not going to be any other book except the Word of God. And yes, we will look at commentaries. We'll look at ancient commentaries. We'll look at extra-biblical texts that can help us understand various perspectives. But again, the whole point is to talk about the Bible. So without further ado, that is what we're going to start with. Hey, Rob, welcome.
Hey, Doug, I'm real excited about this. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. So, you know, you and I were just talking before the show about how we want to jump in. We want to look at different issues in the Bible and, you know, see what we can discover about these. You know, so I'm just, what do you think? Where should we start tonight?
Well, I think probably both of our audiences can find common ground in our work, in the books and DVDs that we've produced, at least in one category, and that would be that of the Nephilim. And I've always found it really interesting, as I've done my research on that particular subject, how it plays into the last days. I grew up in a certain paradigm. I was a Baptist. My dad was a Baptist minister when I was a kid. I got saved at age 7, grew up in the Baptist church, and had Baptist theology my whole life. And of course, I have all the Tim LaHaye books and the Hal Lindsey books and all the different eschatological books out there that follow a certain paradigm. But as I started to study this subject that you and I are both passionate about, I've seen how adding that one simple little variable into the equation changes everything. And as a result, I've had to take a look at the last days and timelines and things like that in a completely different way than I ever did before. And I've pretty much had to throw out all the old school stuff and start over again. So, you know, I don't know, maybe my thought is maybe we can look at some of the end time stuff with that in mind.
No, I think you're right. I've had a lot of people write to me and say, you know, when you leave the Nephilim out, the Bible doesn't make, you know, I mean, it makes sense, I suppose, but there's so many things that get very complicated. And I used to teach a course on Bible difficulties. And I think a lot of the difficulties are of our own making. You know, we've all probably heard atheists and skeptics say, well, if God is such a loving God, then why did he destroy all those people in the flood? Why did he order Joshua and Caleb and the Israelites to destroy the 7 nations of Canaan, men, women, and child? I mean, it just doesn't make any sense if this is a loving God. Or we have a God in the Old Testament, the Hebrew Scriptures, who's sort of a meanie. You know, he's this very vindictive God. But when you get to the New Testament, then you have this really nice God, and you know, it's
well, you know, that was a problem. I had that problem myself, which is one of the reasons why I started doing that study in the first place. Because I'm reading through the New Testament, I get to, I think it's John chapter 14, and Philip says to Jesus, "Show us the Father, and it'll be sufficient." And then Jesus said, basically, what are you talking about? You've been with me all this time, and you're asking me this? Philip, if you've seen me, you've seen my Father. And man, that did not compute in my head, because it was kind of like this good cop, bad cop scenario that I had. You know, it's like Jesus is this amazing, loving guy who, you know, hangs out with publicans and sinners and doesn't judge them, but loves them and heals people and casts out demons. But man, his father seemed kind of genocidal. I don't know how else to put it. I mean, where you see in the Old Testament, he's saying, kill the women, kill the children, wipe out the animals, utterly destroy everything. And I'm going, man, how in the world can Jesus say, if you see me, you've seen my Father? So there was a huge disconnect for me. And it wasn't until I dove into the research regarding Genesis 6 that I could reconcile that. So I think it's important because I don't know about you. I'm sure you probably have some of the same testimonies, but I get emails and letters sent to me all the time from agnostics and atheists, people that were totally turned off to God because of not understanding what's going on in the Old Testament, and their misconceptions of the Father basically led them to say, what would I ever want to have anything to do with this guy?
Yeah. No, and I think that's absolutely right, because I think a number of people have said, I don't like this God. He's a maniacal, genocidal,
Right.
Richard Dawkins put it something like that, he uses all these big words to explain what he really thinks about God. And I would argue, I don't know, I've never met the guy, but it's my perception of him that some of this may be coming from a lack of understanding of the Nephilim, really. I mean, because look, if we go back, let's go back to Genesis chapter 6, right? You have basically two scenarios. I mean, okay, one is that these mighty men of old they were inhabited or possessed by demons, but that's quite the minority position. The majority position is that the sons of Seth, whom God had elected, basically blew it, and then he wiped everybody out. Okay, so that's what most people are holding to today. But before Augustine got on his little bandwagon, everybody was believing that it was fallen angels that came and did their business with women. All right, and it's such a huge difference. If you take out the fallen angels and say, no, these sons of God are just they're just the sons of Seth, now you have a God that doesn't really make a lot of sense, because on the one hand he chooses them. He says, you're my elect, I'm going to give you guys all these incredible benefits, but then you kind of start blowing it, you marry the wrong girls apparently, I don't know, and then he decides to kill everybody. I mean, really, if I had not started with the gospel, and I just started reading the Bible, and I was trying to find answers and say, oh, this is sons of Seth and all this different stuff, I might say, I don't like this God. He doesn't make any sense to me. So, those people, I think that we, in other words, let's call it church dogma, basically, has anesthetized these people. And now it's really hard to reach them because they have rejected this maniacal, genocidal kind of God that they just don't like. And I don't like that God either. But the God that is actually looking out for us, who is destroying humankind because humanity became tainted with this Nephilim strain, is actually doing us a favor. And of course, the bigger picture is about the coming of the Messiah. So if you have a tainted genome, you can't use that for the coming of the Messiah. So it really is huge. I think we've unfortunately created some of these skeptics and atheists ourselves.
Absolutely. I don't know quite how this works, but maybe some of our listeners or viewers have never seen the Richard Dawkins interview with Ben Stein, but I just put it in here in this Google Hangouts thing. I'm not sure how it works in the YouTube thing. Do you know how to make it play?
Yeah, you can. There's a little button on the side that says YouTube, and
yeah, I got that.
You
so
can
if I play it, will it play?
It will play. It should play for all of us.
All right, let's go.
Hello, Professor Dawkins. How are you? I'm Ben Stein. I'm so sorry to keep you waiting. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
You have written that God is a psychotic delinquent invented by mad, deluded people.
No, I didn't say quite that. I said something rather better than that.
Oh, well, please tell us what you said. Please tell us what you said.
Well, I would have to read it from the book.
No, please.
The God of the Old Testament is arguably the most unpleasant character in all fiction. Jealous and proud of it, a petty, unjust, unforgiving control freak, a vindictive, bloodthirsty ethnic cleanser, a misogynistic, homophobic, racist, infanticidal, genocidal, filicidal, pestilential, megalomaniacal, sadomasochistic, capriciously malevolent bully.
So that's what you think of God?
Yeah.
How about if people believed in a God of infinite lovingness and kindness and forgiveness and generosity, sort of like the modern day God? Why spoil it for them? Why not just let them have their fun and enjoy it?
I mean, I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. I write a book, people can read it if they want to. I believe that it is a liberating thing to free yourself from primitive superstition.
So religion is a primitive superstition?
Oh, I think it is, yes.
So you believe it's liberating to tell people that there is no God?
I think a lot of people, when they give up God, feel a great sense of release and freedom.
Why do you think that? I mean, what's your dad? What's your scientist? What's your dad?
I think, well, I've had a lot of letters saying that, and I've...
There are 8 billion people in the world, Dr. Dawkins. How many letters have you had?
No, I haven't done that. That's quite true.
Professor Dawkins seemed so convinced that God doesn't exist that I wondered if he would be willing to put a number on it.
Well, it's hard to put a figure on it, but I mean, I put it as something like, 99% against or something.
Well, how do you know it's 99% against, say, and not 97%?
No, I did. You asked me to put a figure on it, and I'm not comfortable putting a figure on it. I think I just think it's very unlikely.
What? But you couldn't put a number on it?
No, of course not.
So it could be 49%.
Well, it would be. I mean, I think it's unlikely, and it's quite far from 50%.
How do you know?
I don't know. I mean, I put an argument in the book.
Well, then who did create the heavens and the earth?
Why do you use the word who? You see, you immediately beg the question by using the word who.
Well, then how did it get created?
Well, by a very slow process.
Well, how did it start?
Nobody knows how it started. We know the kind of event that it must have been. We know the sort of event that must have happened for the origin of life.
And what was that?
It was the origin of the first self-replicating molecule.
Right. How did that happen?
I told you we don't know.
So you have no idea how it started?
No. Nor has anybody.
Nor has anyone else. What do you think is the possibility that intelligent design might turn out to be the answer to some issues in genetics or in evolution?
It could come about in the following way. It could be that at some earlier time, somewhere in the universe, a civilization evolved by probably some kind of Darwinian means to a very, very high level of technology and designed a form of life that they seeded onto perhaps this planet. Now, that is a possibility and an intriguing possibility. And I suppose it's possible that you might find evidence for that if you look at the details of biochemistry, molecular biology. You might find a signature of some sort of designer.
Wait a second. Richard Dawkins thought intelligent design might be a legitimate pursuit?
And that designer could well be a higher intelligence from elsewhere in the universe. Well, but that higher intelligence would itself have had to have come about by some explicable or ultimately explicable process. It couldn't have just jumped into existence spontaneously. That's the point.
So Professor Dawkins was not against intelligent design, just certain types of designers, such as God.
So the Hebrew God, the God of the Old Testament, he doesn't exist in your view?
Certainly. I mean, that would be a very unpleasant prospect.
And the Holy Trinity of the New Testament,
nothing like that.
Do you believe in any of the Hindu gods? Like Vishnu?
How can you ask such a question?
You don't,
how could I? I mean, why would I, given that I don't believe in any others?
You don't believe in the Muslim God?
No. I mean, why do you even need to ask?
Well, I just wanted to be sure. So you don't believe in any God anywhere?
Any God anywhere would be completely incompatible with anything that I've said. I
assume. Yeah. I just wanted to make sure. You don't believe in any God anywhere?
No.
What if after you died you ran into God? He said, "What have you been doing, Richard? I mean, what have you been doing? I've been trying to be nice to you. Yeah. I gave you a multi-million-dollar paycheck over and over again with your book, and look what you did."
Bertrand Russell had that point put to him, and he said, something like, "Sir, why did you take such pains to hide yourself?"
It really is a brilliant interview. Ben Stein is this guy that seems like he's not really all there, and yet his questions are so thought-provoking. Rob, what this really does is it shows how you can't get away from Creator. And I remember reading the book Contact several years ago by Carl Sagan. And, here this is the guy who's like the granddaddy of evolutionists, right? I mean, he's Mr. Evolution himself. And he basically, let's see if I need to get rid of 1 second. Okay, I don't want to share YouTube anymore. Okay, there we go. Hello. All right. We apologize. Thank you, everyone, for being so patient. This is our first go at trying to have this show on YouTube. So, anyway, what he did is Carl Sagan in his book Contact, he had the opportunity to make his own cosmology, right? And I was expecting to hear, basically how the universe came about through evolution, and then slowly, everything got started. But what happened is these aliens drop off this amazing technology, and some people go for a ride through this technology, and they go and they ask these aliens, so, how did you guys do all this stuff? Where did this very intricate system of transportation throughout the universe come from? Because there was a series of like wormholes or something. And they said, "Oh, well, we didn't build that. It was already there. A different race built that. A race, billions of years before us built that." And I thought, you're kidding me. In order to explain all of the intricacies of the universe, he doesn't go back to it all happened by chance, but he goes back to there were some aliens, and there were some aliens before those aliens who got everything started. So here you have Richard Dawkins. He's probably the foremost spokesperson for evolution on the planet today. And when confronted with the question, where did we come from, what does he do? He says it's the aliens. And we bring this up because there's a lot of things that happen. So, for example, Richard Dawkins, he's evolutionist, he's an atheist. How did he start believing these things? Obviously, Rob, you put that on there to show what his view of God really is, and that nice, well, not nice, but that, what's the right word there? The little diatribe he had there against God.
Well, but it illustrates, here's this guy who's an intellectual. I mean, this guy is a really smart guy, yet he's saying some really stupid things. If you think about it, when you watch him, it makes no sense at all what he's saying, but clearly there's a wound in there somewhere. I mean, I don't think people just start out hating God and not wanting to have anything to do with him. Somewhere along the line, they got a misconception of God. And, when Dawkins first starts talking, Ben Stein first says, you've been quoted as saying such and such. And he goes, actually, it was rather better than that. And can I quote from my book? And he rattles off this long list of hate-filled language, towards God.
Mm-hmm.
And I found, at least in my experience with dealing with different people who have kind of a similar mindset, it's because they don't understand what's going on in the Old Testament. And if you don't understand Genesis 6, what Dawkins said actually makes sense. God does seem like a prejudiced, schizophrenic, genocidal maniac.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's amazing how the issue of the Nephilim is really so central. I approached a church a couple weeks ago up in LA about doing another prophecy conference, and I thought, this is in the heart of Los Angeles, up next to Hollywood. Maybe this church would be interested in hosting it for us. And, they had some reasons. They don't have their own facility. Okay, I respect that. But then I kind of got a lecture from the assistant to this friend that I know, and he was telling me, well, we're not even sure that the Nephilim are really from fallen angels and all this different stuff, and we're just going to stick with the gospel. We're just going to stick with the gospel and the second coming. I'm like, well, okay. I didn't want to get into a debate with him right there because, he doesn't owe me anything. He doesn't have to do that. And look, you and I are not saying that the Nephilim is the only issue out there. I mean, it's
Right.
totally not the only issue out there. Spreading the
Right.
gospel is at the top of our priority list. And yet, it's been our experience that when we go on the streets and we do some street witnessing, etc., sometimes you meet people and they're like, well, I just don't get it. I mean, I am a nice person, or I don't understand the Bible. I don't understand the whole Old Testament thing. Or let's say maybe you successfully and prayerfully share the gospel. They come to the Lord. They're like, wow, this is pretty cool. But then some time goes on and they start reading the Hebrew Scriptures, the Old Testament, and then they say, no, wait a second, this doesn't really make sense. Is this the God that I believed in? So they're really, they have two choices. I'll just stick with the New Testament because I kind of get that. And they'll ignore the Old Testament, which I think is a huge mistake, because there's so many good things in the Old Testament. I mean, you got to spend some time there. That is where you're going to get really the background, the backstory to the really quick summaries that you have in the New Testament. It's all found in the Hebrew Scriptures, so we have to go there. And leaving the Nephilim out of this conversation is going to leave a very one-sided or just kind of a lopsided perspective.
So, as you've done your research on this, how has it affected your view of end times and, just eschatology in general? I mean, did you find the same thing about looking at your timelines and charts and maybe whatever background you grew up in that regard? Did it change anything for you?
Well, I don't know if it changed, if it necessarily changed, like the timelines necessarily, but it did really broaden my understanding. And here was a part of eschatology that nobody was talking about. As I've been around a lot of eschatology teachers, and as a part of Calvary Chapel is very much into eschatology, and yet the issue of the Nephilim just wasn't really there. It was talking about the rapture, it was talking about Ezekiel 38, 39, which are fine topics, but my goodness, there's a whole lot more that the Bible talks about, that Jesus talks about. And so if we don't have the Nephilim, then the end times it's kind of stale, to be honest. I think bringing in the issue of the Nephilim makes so much more sense. For example, in Revelation chapter 9, where it talks about how people will seek death, but it will escape them. And like, no, what are you talking about? I mean, certainly, if I really wanted to kill myself, I could find a way to do it. All right. I mean, I'm not super clever, but I'm clever enough to think of a way. If I were desperate enough to kill myself, I could figure out a way to do it. And yet, you have people that want to die. They're looking for death, and they can't get it. I would argue that they have had some kind of a genetic transformation, and that is totally in line with what happened back in the days of Noah. So, yeah. Well,
you mentioned Ezekiel 38. And, of course, that's Gog and Magog. And mainline eschatology views that as basically what we would consider Russia, China, that area coming down and attacking Israel. And it very well could be, because that's the region of the world that I guess those people settled at one point. But in my research with the Nephilim, I found that there may be something to add to that, if not maybe a whole other way to look at it altogether. I don't know. In 2006, I had the privilege of standing on the Great Wall of China and doing some missionary work there in that area. And when you stand on this thing, I mean, you've probably seen pictures of it, but pictures do not do it justice. And when you stand on this thing, it's massively huge. It's serious overkill if all you're trying to do is keep out 6-foot people. Okay? But when I was there, I came to find out that the original name of the Great Wall of China was the ramparts of Magog. And so I thought, that's interesting. So, of course, I'm still thinking China, Mongolia, Russia, and all that. But I figured, well, I'm going to go look into this some more. And then I come across a parade that happens every year, to this day, even still happens, in the UK called the Lord Mayor Parade. And in the Lord Mayor Parade, they march these two huge giants through the streets of England called Gog and Magog. And so I kept looking, and I come to find out that all through the historical record, Gog and Magog are referred to as giants. It's in Australia, too. They've got this big bank, that shows Gog and Magog as sort of the guardians over this entrance of this bank. And so you see throughout history, and the guy who started the Lord Mayor Parade is King John Lackland of the House of Plantagenet. He's the signer of the Magna Carta. It just so happens that all of our U.S. presidents are related to this one guy also. And he's the one that started the Lord Mayor Parade, where every year they march these two giants through the streets called Gog and Magog. So, I just encourage the people who are listening or watching this right now to do a Google search on Gog and Magog and giant. And so if, in fact, Gog and Magog were giants, then that may be another way of looking at the Gog and Magog War of Ezekiel 38. And I'll put this out there for people to consider as well. I've got the Septuagint up on my monitor here. I think it's Brenton's translation or whatever of the Septuagint.
Yeah, the English.
English, because I don't read Greek, so I'll read the English here. I'll leave the Greek up to you.
Sure.
But Isaiah chapter 13, the English translation from the Septuagint says, "The vision which Isaiah the son of Amos saw against Babylon, lift up a standard on the mountain of the plain, exalt the voice to them, beckon with the hand, open the gates, ye rulers, I give command, and bring them. Giants are coming to fulfill my wrath, rejoicing and at the same time insulting."
Well, I think the word giants
from Gibor.
I think is it from the Gibor? Okay.
Yeah.
I got to double check that, but you sure it's from Gibor? It's not from the Rephaim or something like that?
I'm not positive. I'll have to go back and look at it. I'm looking at the King James. I got it side by side.
Isaiah 13 what?
1 through 3.
Okay. Yeah, that's well, just on a similar note there, in Isaiah 26.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It says that your dead body will arise with my dead body, and the earth will cast out the Rephaim. I mean, that's a very interesting.
I mean, that'd be a double confirmation right there in the same book.
Yeah,
Isaiah.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And what's so amazing about that is what I see as the Rephaim coming back is in Revelation chapter 9. So that certainly raises some interesting questions. The word here in the Hebrew at Revelation 13:3 is Gibor. Gibor.
Yeah.
Gibori. Giborai, excuse me. Now, part of the challenge here, just for so people will know, the word Gibor is used in Genesis chapter 6, that the Nephilim were the mighty Giborim, the mighty men of old. But, we can't say that Gibor always refers to a Nephilim, all right, because
Right.
God is called a Gibor, okay? David had Giborim, he had mighty men as well. So
Right.
it doesn't necessarily prove that it's a Nephilim. Could it be a Nephilim? It could be. Basically, Gibor is the umbrella term for somebody who's mighty. Okay, that's all it means. This is the same root as Gabriel, right? Gabriel, that he is the mighty of God, or God is my mighty hero kind of thing. So basically, it means a hero. So it doesn't have to mean Nephilim, but it could be Nephilim. That's the thing to understand.
Yeah, that's what I find interesting, though, with regard to the Septuagint, having been translated, some say, by 70 Hebrew scholars, who would have, of course, known their language and known the context and everything else, is how they will interchangeably translate the word Giborim into either giant, as we've just discussed, or as simply a mighty warrior, courageous, valiant man, like in the case of David's mighty men. Because if you look in the Greek, when it's regarding David's mighty men, comes from the same Hebrew word, Giborim, they translate it as ton dynatos or ton dynaton. It's in the Greek. And so, of course, that translates over into our English as mighty man or mighty warrior. Whereas in Genesis 6, 1 through 4, and also Genesis 10, 8, and 9 regarding Nimrod, you see that same Hebrew word translated as giant, same as we see here in Isaiah 13. So that causes me to think, okay, these are Hebrew scholars translating their Hebrew word into Greek, and of course Brenton later gives it to us in English.
Mm-hmm.
Something to consider, anyway, is how they treat that word. I mean, they're the ones that wrote it,
Yeah. Well, the Dinatone would be just powerful ones.
Right.
It doesn't. Again, that's an interesting one. I mean, I would argue it's perhaps inconclusive, though I think Isaiah 26. I've never looked at it in the Septuagint, to be honest, so I could just take a peek at it right now and see what that says.
What's the verse?
26:19, and it really is just an incredible. It's just an amazing verse.
I've got the dead shall rise, and they that are in the tomb shall be raised, and they that are in the earth shall rejoice, for the dew from thee is healing to them, but the land of the ungodly shall perish.
Yeah, see there they have just left it out altogether. In the Greek, we don't even see the word for gigantes or anything. They've just, so the Septuagint's interesting. How to always make sense of that. I like the Septuagint. I think it's a very fascinating book, and it's wonderful for getting a perspective as to what they were thinking. Sometimes, though, they don't say much of anything. So, in my opinion, it would be a little bit inconclusive. Though I do find, I don't think the Septuagint will completely make the argument, but I think it will support an argument in many cases. In this case, they just didn't put anything. But in the Hebrew, which I'd say is definitely primary, you have the word Rephaim, and both you and I, Rob, have demonstrated how the Rephaim are related to the Nephilim. And so I'm not sure which of your works it's in, but I can at least speak for mine. In Corrupting the Image, I have a chart there. Who were the Nephilim? And I show that in Numbers 13:33, where it says that the sons of Anak, the Anakim, came from the Nephilim. That's really an equal sign, right? If you were to say that Jose came from Mexico, you're like, okay, so hey, Jose is an American, or he's a Mexican, right? So it's you're saying that this particular ethnicity comes from this ethnicity, then they are essentially the same, maybe a slight difference, but they're basically, it's a one-for-one correlation. And then when you start to compare the Rephaim with the Anakim, the Amorim, with the Zamzumim, and who am I missing there? The Emim. Okay, these are the different names for these beings. And Rephaim is never used of somebody who's just a regular kind of guy. It's always used for somebody who's really much a bad guy. And a passage that really hit me hard, which is in the Hebrew Scriptures in the Old Testament, is Amos 2:9, where it says, "Yet it was I who destroyed the Amorites, whose height was like the cedars." I think that is it's one of these passages that is so easy to gloss over. But if we'll take the time and look at it, we'll see that, wow, this is huge. This is God confirming that the 12 spies, or at least the 10, were not just exaggerating. They were telling the truth. They were telling it as it was, but their sin was that they weren't trusting in the Lord. That's where they really blew it. But these guys are huge. I mean, how tall is a cedar tree? It's somewhere between 40 to it's like 40 to 80 feet tall. So what, is God going to exaggerate? He's like, well, I caught a fish this big. I mean, God doesn't need to exaggerate. He's amazing. His resume is incredible. He can just say whatever is true. He always says what's true because he never lies.
So if he only says what's true, and we believe the Holy Spirit inspired the authors of Scripture to write, then under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, at least really in the book of Isaiah, he's telling us giants are coming back. And you got Isaiah 13, and Isaiah 14 is really interesting too, because you got there verse 12 where Lucifer is fallen, how art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning. But then when you scroll down to verse 21, it says, prepare slaughter for his children. The his in that case is Lucifer. For the iniquity of their fathers, that they do not rise nor possess the land nor fill the race of the world with cities. I believe they're coming back, but as we see here, God's going to stop them just like he did with the Amorites in Amos 2:9.
Wow, that's really cool.
They're coming back.
Yeah. People sometimes ask, okay, so where does it say that Satan's going to have seed and all this different stuff? Well,
Boom, right there.
yeah, right there. I mean, that's one of them. He's got kids. Of course, Genesis 3:15, right? I will cause enmity between you and the one between your seed and her seed. That's the first one. But you know, this is what kind of got me on my quest of checking out what is the seed. The seed. If you look this word up, it kind of blows you away. For example, 1 John 3:9, no one having been born again continues to sin, for the seed of God dwells in him. You're like, now wait a second. How can God have seed? And the word there is sperm, all right? I mean, look, there's no messing around here. Well, that's the only word for seed in the Bible is the word sperm, okay? So at least in the New Testament. And the Greek is sperma. That's what we're talking about.
It's zera in Hebrew, right?
Zera in Hebrew, exactly. And, that's just kind of the, how should I put it, the standard issue, to put it, that's how it is. It's just that's what we have. And let's see, it looks like my little picture disappeared. I'm not sure why that is, but if you don't see me, I'm still here. In case you're wondering.
I see you.
Oh,
I
good.
can still see you.
Okay, well, it must be there was an issue with Google Hangouts. This is fun. This is our first show together. And by the way, everybody, we plan on doing this every week, Lord willing, of course. So I think Sunday night's going to be our night. That's what we're planning on. We'll let you know if that changes. But we just want to cover topics and see if we can encourage each other, if we can challenge each other. There's things that boy, Rob has done some incredible digging, and I just look forward to listening to it. And this, it's so fun, isn't it, Rob? I mean, it's really a blast to just get in the Bible and oh man, that's so cool. I mean, you and I are probably we're kind of like Bible nerds, We're like
yeah. Were you good at sword drill back in getting sword drill?
Yeah, exactly.
Scriptures. Well, I gotta say, Doug, I was really excited when you approached me with the idea of doing this show. We just did a conference together with a few other people that we know up in Chicago, the Chicago Summit. And what I really loved about that particular conference, as opposed to all the ones that I've been to so far, is the chance that we all had to listen to each other, because usually one person speaking and another's in another room speaking, so we don't get to hear each other. But we also had some downtime where we were able to compare notes and debate and chat with each other, and I loved it. So, the idea to do this every Sunday night was really appealing to me. And for those of you who are watching or listening, we hope to do this 10 p.m. Central Standard Time, which I think is 8 p.m. your time, right, Doug?
That's the plan.
Yeah,
that's the plan. We'll see if it works with the kids' schedule.
Yeah, we'll try to work it out. We've also we're in the process of building a website, which will be questfortruth.net, and that's instead of the word 4, it's the number 4. So quest4truth.net. It's not up yet, so don't go there. There's nothing there, but hopefully we'll get that up soon. We'll have all the archives there and everything too. And we want to hear from you as well. Doug and I can certainly talk about just about anything for any length of time. But if you have questions or ideas or would like to hear us discuss something, drop us a line, either his email or mine. Mine is rob@seedtheseries.com. And go ahead and give yours, Doug.
It's douglas@douglashamp.com.
So just drop us an email and let us know a subject that you would like us to cover, and we'll try to cover it here on Quest for Truth.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I think that's about all the time we have for today. It went pretty fast, and I'm looking forward to next week. I don't know if I could wait that long, but we'll see if we can. We'll leave it till next week. So I won't say any more because I'm getting a little bit tongue-tied. But this is really fun, Rob. So God bless everyone. Until next week, just keep studying the Bible. God said what He means. And when you take it literally, it gets so exciting. It's really amazing. Write us. If you have any questions, we'd love to take those and chew on them and answer them next.